Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Aligning Employee Wellbeing with Your Culture webinar. A huge thank you to our guests from Limeade and Exubrancy. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. We are recording this webinar, and you'll see the slides in the handout section in your go-to webinar panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll also send them out afterwards. Also, you can submit questions throughout the webinar, and we'll reserve 15 minutes at the end to answer as many of those as we can. We've also inserted some pre-populated questions in the deck, so if you submitted questions beforehand, hopefully you'll recognize some of those in our content. And then also, if someone wouldn't mind just doing us a favor and chatting in that you can see the slides on our chat feature, just to make sure that everybody can see them as we advance our content. We would appreciate that. And while we're waiting for, all right, great, thank you. So it looks like we can see the slides. And just by round of quick introductions, my name's David Shanklin. I'm the head of our culture strategy team here at CultureIQ. My team specializes in taking the data from our employee culture survey and helping organizations understand what it means, make sense out of it, and figure out what to do in an effort to improve their culture. And we have an entire quality around wellness, and it comes up a lot when we're talking with leaders and talking with employees about culture. And so we went out and we found Laura and Liz, who are joining us today as experts in the field of wellness, and we're going to talk to them a little bit about their experience and how you all can support your wellness efforts in your culture. So Dr. Laura Hamill is the Chief People Officer at Limeade. Limeade is a corporate wellness technology company that drives real employee engagement. In addition to leading HR, Laura is also responsible for nurturing the Limeade culture of improvement, developing groundbreaking people practices, and architecting employee engagement strategies. If Laura is not at work, you'll find her walking her golden retriever. That's her favorite wellness hobby. Also a dog lover. Appreciate you sharing that, Laura. And Liz Wilkes is also joining us. Liz is the founder and CEO of Exubrancy, who's an NYC-based startup that helps organizations maximize employee health and happiness via affordable on-site fitness, meditation, and massage programs. Exubrancy boasts a client roster of over 250 top companies, including Spotify, NBC, and Uber. Liz is a second-time founder, recently selling her Seattle-based lighting and design business. She's also a certified meditation teacher and holds a BA from Amherst College and an MBA from Columbia Business School in New York. You'll always find Liz at the office because she is a founder and a CEO, but if you don't find her behind her laptop working, she recently divulged to us that you can find her in the phone booth of her office space, likely meditating and putting that meditation practice to good work as a certified meditation teacher. So that's Liz's favorite wellness hobby. And again, Liz and Laura, just thank you so much for joining us today. So here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to start by defining well-being in the workplace and talk about well-being versus wellness and some of the trends there. We'll talk a little bit about the business case for investing in employee well-being, and then choosing the right programs and getting people to participate in them. Obviously, it's not just about putting the programs in place, but getting people to actually show up can be a challenge, especially depending on our culture. Then we'll talk some about wellness on a budget and how to do this in an economical way, and measuring the success of your programs, because we all know folks like to see results, and understanding the impact of these things is important. We'll also share some tips for managers and how they can encourage wellness on their teams, and then finally we'll wrap up with what's the future hold, and where are we headed. So I'm getting a note that people are having trouble hearing me. Is that still the case? Okay, we'll keep moving. All right, great. So diving into our our first topic here of defining wellness in the workplace. Can we jump to the next slide, please? Awesome, thank you. So the topic of really culture and then in some sense wellness or well-being started around the 60s when anthropologists started to study organizations. So before then, of course, there was a big movement around organizations more as machines and instead of collections of individuals. So as we saw this come into play and anthropologists come into the workplace and really thinking about organizations as a collection of people, we start to introduce the concepts of wellness and how that can help organizations produce more effectively and operate more effectively. And as we've moved in, especially to the 20th century or 21st century, we get organizations being much more proactive versus reactive. And of course, with the we're moving from, as we move into a more knowledge-based workplace where many of us are in offices and the like, it's less of a focus on safety and more of this holistic approach to wellness and well-being. And of course, for any business, but especially businesses that are more manufacturing oriented or even healthcare, safety is obviously still a top priority. And as we think about safety, we begin to take it to the next level with this really holistic approach of the entire person and thinking about the entire person in the workplace and that employee. What we've noticed as well is that there's been this recent trend from a movement from wellness to well-being. And the dictionary definition of well-being is the state of being happy, healthy, or successful, as you see here on the slide. But we want to position this for Laura. Laura, would love to hear a little bit about your definition of well-being as an expert in this space, and particularly how you see that definition to have evolved and perhaps being different than some companies are thinking about wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. So we for sure are seeing many of our customers, many of our prospects shifting from calling even their program a wellness program to calling it a well-being program. And for us, the two fundamental differences are from comparing wellness to well-being is wellness tends to be mostly focused on physical health. And what a lot of our customers see and what we really truly believe is that you have to think about the whole person. If you really want to improve well-being, you have to think about people as systems. What happens in one part of your life affects another part of your life. So we really think that that's kind of a fundamental shift, is focusing on the whole person. And relatedly, the second big difference between wellness and well-being is really thinking about different outcomes. So it's not so much about trying to reduce insurance costs or thinking about people as health risks. Really now we're moving into bigger business outcomes that we care about. So things more like employee engagement, retention, customer satisfaction, sales, safety, those kinds of areas. When we really think about the whole person, we have a much broader set of outcomes. So that's really for us the two key differences between wellness and well-being. And to get to your question, David, about the definition, the only thing our definition would really tweak about the one that you have from Merriam-Webster is we change or to and. Really, the idea, the definition, the broad definition of well-being that's very much rooted in the positive psychology literature is that there are two things that are at play. You have to feel good. That's one part of it. That's the happy and healthy part. And then the other part of it is you actually really have to feel like you have purpose, that you're striving for something. So that successful part really fits in nicely there. So these two ideas are pretty well supported in the literature, that you have to feel good and you have to feel like you have meaning and purpose in your life.
Laura, thank you for that. One of the things that springs to mind there about the purpose piece and related to successful, we see mission and value alignment as a key part of culture at CultureIQ, and we know that it's a key part to to every culture we measure, it continues to come up as a key influencer of employee engagement. And I think that's a nice tie-in to how wellness is a part of culture in general. So that's great, thank you. And then on this note of wellness really being this holistic approach, I think a great way to capture that and put in some sense, a framework around it. Liz, could you walk us through, please, on the next slide? We've got a wheel of wellness here, and just give us your take on wellness as this holistic approach.
Absolutely, and hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me today. It's really great to be here. So yeah, to echo what Laura mentioned, when we find companies using indicators like, for example, just BMI data to diagnose population wellness, we feel like they're missing the mark. Even though this is a wheel of wellness, I think it really plays into what Laura defined as well-being. This is from the Center for Social Impact Strategy, but we use it with companies, with clients, to really broaden the conversation around wellness and well-being. So not just, are people healthy physically, but is your environment supporting wellness? Are people feeling financially fit? Are people feeling financially stable, intellectually stimulated, emotionally stable? These are really all important pieces of the picture. And I would encourage people, everyone will have a copy of this presentation, to perhaps later on download it, print out this page, and as an exercise, just fill out for your organization, what are you doing in each of these sort of slices of the pie today, and then what might be some near-term and far-term wins for you, programs that you might be able to develop or implement to sort of flesh out some of the places that are looking a little sparser. For example, environment. If your office doesn't necessarily focus on well-being enhancing environmental design, what's a small win? Maybe you can find a highly trafficked area and buy plants to make that area be more conducive to well-being. So yeah, I think this wheel is a great tool for making sure that companies are thinking holistically about well-being and wellness.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, and I think what that captures is that people bring their full selves to work, right? You don't just, if you're having a personal challenge at home, whether it's a sick family member or a sick kid or whatever it might be, that it doesn't disappear when you get in the elevator at work. And so this holistic approach really, it's important for companies to manage that. As a quick plug, we'll put the link up at the end, but we just put out a white paper on stress, and it talks a lot about how stress can be a motivator, but it can also get in the way of performance, and a lot of stress can come from places outside the workplace, and we find a lot of companies helping employees manage their entire lives, not just their work lives, which speaks to this wheel and this approach. And they're seeing the productivity gains to go with that. So on that note too, just moving to the to how well-being is a part of culture. Laura, could you share with us a little bit about this organizational support model and about how you approach wellness as a piece of culture at Limeade?
Yeah, absolutely. So we for sure believe in this concept of whole person well-being. When you really think about any one person who works in an organization, thinking about them in really kind of bigger picture ways is really important. But what we also have come to learn is that probably just as important is the role that the organization plays in supporting that person in their well-being improvement. So it's one thing just to say, hey, employees, we offer this really cool program, go do it. When they come back to their desk, when they're talking to their peers, when they're talking to their manager, do they really feel like it's something that they can do? So last year, we created an organizational support model where we were really just trying to articulate what are all those different components that an organization really should have in place if they authentically want to support well-being improvement in their employees. So that model has some different layers. There are 8 different components, but there are things like at the really local level. How does a manager talk to an employee about their well-being? Do they even bring it up And do they talk about it in a way that feels positive to that employee? How does the physical work environment support well-being improvement? It's this, things you'd obviously think of around the snacks and the beverages, but it's also things like the light, the natural light that's in the office, what the space feels like. And so those are some things sort of at the local level, but also at the organization-wide level, there's the role that leaders play in saying that well-being matters and that there's a strategic reason, a business strategy reason why we care about the well-being of our employees. And so at the overall, kind of wrapped all the way around that, for us is the organizational culture. So the norms and values and beliefs of the organization fit really temper or set the tone for everything that happens. So everything that happens at the local level and everything that happens at the organizational wide level. So what we've been trying to do is really understand what specific cultural attributes might be the most important to really support well-being improvement. And so recently we did some research and found some interesting things with that. And so we tested 10 different cultural attributes, and 2 that really jumped to near the top were about trust. And so really feeling like the organization trusts its employees and vice versa, that employees trust the organization. So what we see is that the concept of trust is one that's so important to well-being and well-being improvement.
Thank you. And love hearing about how you've approached this, and that organizational support model. It checks off really at the foundation, the 2 key components of building a great culture, and that's having the leader behaviors that support the culture you're looking to drive, and then also the processes and policies in place that support those same behaviors. And it sounds like you've really talked about, you've really gotten to the heart of what that alignment looks like, both at the local and the global or corporate level. So
can I throw one more thing in there, David?
Sure.
One more thing that we just actually tested all of those 8 components to see which of those 8 components of our organizational support model actually matter the most, both to overall perceptions of being supported and also to well-being in general. And what we found, kind of contrary to popular opinion, is that manager was the most important. So the manager played the most important role in supporting well-being. Leaders actually came out 3rd. And so I think that it matters a lot what leaders do in the role, and the role playing, the role modeling that they play, also in the messaging they send about the importance of well-being, but the manager in our research is actually more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and of course, those leaders at some level of the organization are managers, so in some way it all trickles down as well. Right. So, yeah, you have it all in there, and it does go to show that you have to be working with those frontline leaders, and we all know that age-old saying, people leave bosses, not companies. So it goes right in line. Thank you for that. I love the data. Yeah. So on the note of measuring some of these things and understanding really like what matters and what's going on in your organization, Liz, could you share with us a little bit about this well-being audit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to the wellness wheel that we shared, that's a really great tool for understanding the different sort of elements that play into organizational well-being. But how do you diagnose success or improvement areas? And this plays into what we'll talk about momentarily about making the business case for wellness. But it's very helpful to have a number of different touch points when you're evaluating well-being in your organization. So again, not just a BMI score, but looking at some less conventional metrics. So what does event attendance look like? Because that's a great indicator of how socially comfortable people are feeling in their office environment. Data like self-reported happiness, which there's a number of tools to diagnose this, but it can even be a question that's added to a survey that you circulate. Perhaps it's a wellness survey where you're looking to see what activities people might like to participate in, but you can also add a simple question about how happy do you feel today on a scale of 1 to 10 and get a really great pulse check that way. Looking at retention data, so that is obviously a huge indicator of happiness and well-being. And then gathering anecdotal evidence, so just having conversations with people about their various feelings around their own well-being, emotional, physical, and then taking all of that data and realizing that that is your business case for when you're speaking to the ultimate decision maker about getting that approval for a program that you've identified as one that would be highly impactful. Literally taking sound bites, testimonials, you can add those to your case.
That's great. And Liz, jumping right to our next slide, could you share with us a little bit about how you can make that business case specific to your company as you talked about it, through those conversations and that data? And then after that, Laura, we want to hear from you on some of the hard returns you've seen and how that comes about.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to the different data points that I just mentioned, another piece that we really like to bring into the conversation is, what are your competitors doing? And we find that this really resonates with CEOs, with the C-suite, especially if there's any retention issues in the mix. And it's not always so easy to figure out exactly what programs your competitors are offering. But one thing that Exubrancy does is we certainly have more intel, because we work with 250 companies, on what different types of companies are frequently offering. And oftentimes when organizations do have these programs, they're bragging about them. So look on their blog, look on different websites to figure out on their recruiting pages what they're offering. And if you're losing people to Spotify and they're doing weekly yoga and boot camp, it's really easy to point to that as a key fact. Also, finding programs that your C-suite really cares about. So looking for internal advocates at that level. Is someone an avid yoga practitioner, a meditator? They're probably going to be more likely to approve something if they've seen the effects firsthand. And one little cheat we've seen work, to call it that, is if one of the ultimate decision makers has an instructor or a teacher that they work with, you could even offer to bring that person into the office for maybe a workshop or maybe even an ongoing engagement. Then it becomes really, really personal and a really exciting thing for someone at that level to be sharing with your population. And I have some more I guess that I could share around the return on investment, but maybe I'll hand it over to Laura first and add more as needed.
Sure. So one of the ways that we are really thinking about this business case concept is through a simple model that we call the great company model. The idea of it is, if we really have an authentic investment in well-being, so we offer our employees a real way for them to focus on improving their well-being, and we couple that with organizational support. So if we have that real true investment in well-being, what we believe, and this is what we're doing research on, is that that will be strongly related to increased levels of employee engagement. And when I say employee engagement, what I mean is not so much engagement with software or particular tools or programs. I mean that bigger employee engagement, the idea of having that deep emotional connection to the work, the concept of being excited to come to work every day. So we're trying to really understand the relationship statistically between well-being and employee engagement. And what's really cool about that is if we can show that, and we're having some really good evidence of that employee engagement has been studied so much, and there's such strong relationships between employee engagement and people results. So things like retention, presenteeism, reduced absenteeism, also things like innovation and productivity, and then also really business results when we think about things like customer satisfaction and loyalty. Also things like profitability. There's been a ton of research on employee engagement and those kinds of business outcomes. So we think then that if you actually have well-being and employee engagement, those great business results will happen, and you also will be considered a great place to work. So we're really doing a lot of research to test out all those different relationships, and we did some research last year that we found some interesting statistics there around employees who feel that their employer actually cares about their well-being were more engaged, 38% more engaged. And some research also that we have just finished this year is saying that those employees with higher well-being are more favorable on employee engagement survey items than those employees who have lower well-being. So we're seeing some real good support for this concept. Now, what's interesting is when we think about this whole transition from wellness to well-being, there are definitely a lot of customers out there, or people out, organizations out there who are still thinking about just the physical health aspect of the kind of wellness program. So there's a lot that's really moving and shifting about this, but we're seeing a lot of what we would consider more progressive organizations really seeing that if you focus on people as people and truly value them and care about their whole person well-being, they're going to just be more excited to be working in your organization.
Makes sense. That's some great data there. And just to share another data point or set of data points that can be very helpful in the conversation about the ROI of these programs. One story we love to share, Mark Bertolini, who's the CEO of Aetna, was, just to give a little backstory, was in a skiing accident about a decade ago and actually broke his neck, and then discovered the benefits of meditation and yoga when he was recovering from that serious injury. So after that transformational experience, he made a point of bringing yoga and meditation into his organization and actually brought in Duke University to gauge the success of his programs. And just some awesome data that is great to share within your organization if you're making the case for wellness. These yoga and meditation programs created a 7% drop in their health insurance costs in 2012, or at least that drop was happened in 2012, the year that they were rolling out these programs, so they're obviously linked. And they found that participants in the programs gained 69 minutes of additional productivity per week, which is the equivalent of about $3,000 in savings per employee per year on average. And they also found that self-reported stress was reduced by almost a third for program participants. So there's really good information out there if you're trying to make the case, along with information like Laura's around the bumps in employee engagement.
Yeah, thank you for that. Those examples are always really powerful. There's a great New York Times article on Mark if you want to look for some more information on that and have a Time subscription. And on that note, around the stress reduction, and that it's interesting, you gain productivity by asking people to spend time on this at work. So it's almost counterintuitive to some degree, but you realize that by stepping out for that, you actually create gains. And then on the point about reducing stress, we found in our TCC data that it's our top company culture list that we do with Entrepreneur Magazine. The best predictor of people not being stressed in the workplace is actually that these types of programs are offered, and they have access to, employees have access to things that help them manage their mental and physical well-being. So we know that these programs matter, and Laura, would just like to get your take on how do you pick the right programs when you're looking to do this, because we can't do everything as an organization.
Yeah.
What are some tips and tricks for picking the right stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things, and this is hard, it's not easy, but really getting clear on what goal you're trying to solve or what problem you're trying to solve in your organization. I think one of the things that we see not go so well is when companies just want to have a wellness program because everybody else has one, and they just want to check that box and say they did it, without really thinking, how could we make this particular program something that's meaningful here and that solves a problem that's specific to our company. So it might be that we care about our employees and we care about their well-being because we want them to be safe. So safety might be something they care a lot about just because of the nature of their business. Or they might have an attrition problem. So they might want to think about how do we keep people engaged here. So it's really about customizing to what's going on in that organization when we think about the design, the original strategic design of the program. So getting really clear about what the goals of the program are, I think would be the first step. And then on top of that, thinking about how to make this program fit here. So what is it about us, our organization, that's special, that's unique, that is really something we want to keep building on? So how could we actually customize this program to feel like it's very culture enhancing? It's really making this place be a place that people are drawn to. So I think that the goals of the organization and really aligning it to the culture you're trying to create could be really good ways of building the program. So, and those things are sometimes, you know, it takes some work, it takes some doing to come up with those two things. So yeah, we do this. This is the kind of stuff that we do at Limeade, is really try to work closely in developing a program that fits for that company. So not just any old out-of-the-box kind of solution.
Great, thank you, Liz. Yeah, anything to add?
Yeah, well, I guess looking at the point about marketing the program and encouraging participation, one thing I like to stress to our clients is how important internal marketing is for these programs. So it's really not typically a build it and they will come situation when we're rolling out new wellness programming. So one thing we do encourage people to keep in mind, and many of you may have heard of this, but there's a concept, the marketing rule of 7, which is that a prospective buyer needs to see or hear a marketing message 7 times before choosing to make a purchase. So we really help our clients get creative about getting those 7+ touch points in before a program actually rolls out. And I'll just quickly rattle off a couple or some of the ones that some of the opportunities for communication that we see really work. So it can be as simple as sending a calendar invite for an event, onboarding integration, so having conversations about wellness program when someone comes to the office day 1, first week, letting them know what the programs are and what the norms are around program attendance. Creating a sign-up sheet, which sounds so simple, but having a sign-up sheet, and we like to encourage people to have sign-up sheets be numbered and have a limit so that people feel like there's some sort of scarcity for a program, and if you have a wait list, it'll make you feel worse if they don't actually show up for an event, which I know attendance can be a real issue in companies where people are so busy and stressed out. And this can be like a simple Google Doc. Creating a Google group or Gmail group or a Slack channel for people to opt into, and then they'll get increased messaging around the wellness going in their office. Creating a splash or an Evite invitation to make something feel special if you're doing a one-off event around wellness or well-being. Digital or printed posters, and then branding the program. So we see this a lot. It really makes it fun if you can create, a brand around well-being at your organization. So an example is at Twitter, they call all wellness or fitness specifically related programming Fitter Twitter, and they use this hashtag on gear, in conversation. It's really catchy and it really works. So again, just thinking about really an effort to market your programs internally to make them successful.
And I'll just kind of jump on that concept, just a couple more points, was just the idea of how do we listen to what's going on in the program to make changes to it. So we feel really strongly that you have to be really paying attention at all times in terms of what's going on and whether or not people are participating, and making sure that we change things in the program based on the feedback that we get. So it's pretty important to always be paying attention and measuring how things are going.
Fabulous. And I guess this is a great transition to talking about, we actually, when we solicited questions before, got a lot on well-being on a budget. So I'll just head right into a few ideas that we have around working with zero or a small budget to increase well-being for your population. So one idea is pulling for your team's interests and hobbies. And even if you are running surveys in your organization, having a question around, do you have a skill or a passion that you'd like to share with the team? Many organizations have people that are trained yoga teachers, or maybe someone's an aromatherapy junkie and wants to run a little aromatherapy workshop. Maybe there's a runner who can lead a running club. Find out if you have internal people that can lead the programming. I mean, that is a great free option. There's also incredible audio and video resources out there. So thinking about, like we were talking about before, for example, intellectual well-being, skill development, and intellectual development. One fun tip that we've seen is having screenings of things like TED Talks in your office where people can get together, maybe provide some free popcorn for participants, but it's a great way to have people learning together, and it doesn't cost anything. You can also use resources like, for example, Headspace is an amazing app that has guided meditations. Calm.com, CALM.com, has great guided meditations as well. So you could book a conference room, have people listen to one of these meditations and participate as a group. And that can be a weekly event. It doesn't cost a thing. Another idea, oftentimes one issue we see around wellness is people don't really know which budget it should be pulling from. So as much as you can look to something like your company culture or your team event budget and incorporate well-being focused events into those initiatives, that's a win-win for everyone. So for example, doing something like a healthy sushi making class or a terrarium building workshop to get people with some more green on their desks, all great options. And then I guess lastly, capitalize on free options that are available to you. So get to know your health insurance provider and find out what resources they have available. And there's also great free resources available in many communities. Most major cities have at least one provider of free health fairs. And a caveat, nothing's really free. Oftentimes when you bring in a free health fair, you are going to have your people marketed to a little bit by a chiropractor or a doctor. But these health fair companies are actually great about bringing in providers who work with your insurance. So it really is a good opportunity to match, for example, an employee with a dentist or a doctor that does take their insurance. So I'm super pro free health fairs.
Those are so good. One thing I'd like to just add that's really cheap, free. One of the things we do here at Limeade is we try to make almost every meeting that is a one-on-one kind of a meeting a walking meeting. And so what we've done is created a really simple walking one-on-one agenda so that we can make sure we still have good, rigorous conversations about things we need to talk about, but also we can make sure that we're outside, breathing fresh air, and getting kind of that outside perspective in our day. So that's something that's really easy to do and makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the walking meetings. They're always the best in my book. And so appreciate all these options too, like on the budget, all these free ideas, which are fantastic, and no reason not to do these things really. And I think it's a good transition because this may be a great place to start for an organization as they look to begin their wellness journey. And then at some point, we all want to move to even more impactful programs, which can at times cost money. And a very helpful way to do that could be measuring the success of some of these free things and then imagining the possibilities if we had a budget to allocate here. So Laura, could you talk a little bit about measuring the success of these programs and to kind of tying this back to making some of the business case?
Yeah, absolutely. We really believe that it's good to start with measuring well-being, and we have a well-being assessment that we have developed. This really a whole person well-being assessment. So we think that it's pretty important to measure well-being, and one of the key points of well-being is that it is a subjective perception. Nobody but you knows whether or not you have well-being in your life. You could look at your life on a piece of paper and all the things that are going on, and one person would look at it and maybe say you don't have well-being, but you might still really believe that you do. So it very much is a subjective, it needs to be a subjective measure. So we highly encourage organizations to measure well-being and really to make sure, like I said before, that you're really clear about what you're trying to do with your program. If you're only trying to focus on one specific aspect of well-being, or you're trying to really make sure that you're thinking about the whole person, and then ultimately what kinds of business goals or HR goals are you trying to improve. We also really encourage people to think outside of just program goals, move beyond just whether or not people participate, but then next into what is the real way that this focus on well-being is making this place better. How is it that we're improving something about the business? We have this assessment and we ask lots of questions about well-being, but this is just an example of some of the things that we can think about from the organizational support perspective. So overall, my employer cares about the health and well-being of its employees, supports me living a healthier life, and the leaders of this organization are good role models for well-being improvement. Those are just some examples of the way we measure organizational support. So I think that I think people can think about weaving some of these kinds of questions into their already existing employee survey if they don't do a well-being assessment, and just really measuring, getting to, do people feel supported and they feel like you care about them? It's pretty important to get their perception.
Wonderful, thank you. So we got 2 slides left, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. So we'll try to get through these in 5 minutes or so, so we can leave plenty of time for questions. Laura, share with us some tips for managers that you've seen, and you talk specifically about how important the manager is to well-being. What do you see those managers doing well?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a really interesting space because I don't know if we've really given managers the tools to really talk about this with their employees. And I think that that's something that we can do that, again, is pretty inexpensive and that could make a big difference. It's really about spending time with their employees and understanding that employee, right? Every employee has a different life circumstance, different things going on for them, and really understanding what's going on, what they're worried about, what they get happy about, what they get excited about. So it's important to understand the employees and really think about the long term with them. It's not just about whether or not they just got this particular thing you needed them to do done yesterday. It's really about their long-term growth and their long-term really employment with your organization. One of the things that we're doing here at Limeade next week is that we're having a manager session just on this topic around how managers here at Limeade should be supporting their employees in their well-being. So it's an interesting kind of fine line, and I think this is a part of the discussion that makes it really difficult, is how far do you go into somebody's personal life? Like, where do you draw that line in really making sure we're keeping the conversation professional and related to work and not too much into their personal life, but still really getting to know them. So I think that's part of the trick, and that we see some managers kind of avoiding the conversation because they don't understand where that line crosses. So that's, I think, some of the nuance that we'll need to get to around encouraging managers to support well-being. But mostly, at the end of the day, it's really about valuing people, understanding that they have lots of other things going on in their life outside of just what you see in the 8 or 9 or 10 hours that you're with them. And it's really just being there for them, showing that you care, and really also setting a good example as a manager. I think that showing that you are a whole person, that you have other things going on, and that you also are trying to have well-being in your life is pretty important.
Yeah, that's.
So
I was just going to say it's extremely helpful, and what it sparks for me is this notion of trust that you talked about earlier as well, and how you are able to have those conversations, and that they are personal in nature, and so starting at the right place based on the level of trust you have with your employees is exceedingly important, and that's way more art than science.
Yes,
but certainly something important to consider. One thing that it sparks for me too is just this notion of something as simple as being very respectful of PTO and vacation time, and encouraging people to use that and being supportive of people taking that time off, because that's very much a part of the workplace, and it's something that's personal for folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
the future, do you want me to jump in there? Just a couple things here on the future. So what we think is that this whole industry of wellness is shifting so much and changing in such big ways, really away from just the focus on physical health, just away from thinking about people as health risks or health insurance costs, into this place that's much bigger. It's really about how do we create great places to work, how do we engage people and really value people as people. So we think that this industry is moving into that space, and that the trust part of this is so important. If people can be their whole selves at work, we have to really, their trust has to be there in order for that to really happen, for them to feel like they're really supported and that it's authentic and that the organization really has their best interest in mind. And we really think that absolutely has to be aligned to the vision and the business strategy too, for it to be something that the organization will keep doing. And what we see in the research that we've done and other companies have done is that companies really can be more successful if they care about well-being, and also that it's really the progressive companies, the companies who understand that the only reason they succeed is because of their employees. Those are the companies that really get this concept of well-being and how important it is.
Yeah, thank you for that. I love this topic about where it's headed. Liz, any final thoughts to close us out on the future of well-being, and then we'll jump into the Q&A.
Oh, for sure. Just a few words. So it's been really exciting. Exubrancy launched 4 years ago, and even in just 4 short years, it's been so clear how much momentum there is behind the evolution of corporate wellness. I mean, literally when we launched, there were companies that would laugh at us when we suggested that their workforce try out a meditation workshop for their team. And now the same companies are literally calling us and asking us about weekly meditation programs. So just the awareness around corporate wellness, the broadened understanding about wellness versus well-being, we've really seen a shift. And it's very exciting to see it becoming more mainstream. I mean, I think what we all want here is for the future of the workplace to be one that is completely committed to employee well-being. And I mean, many of you probably saw the news last month that, for example, Arianna Huffington left the Huffington Post and started Thrive Global, an organization committed to individual and corporate wellness. And when figures like that make it so clear that this is the future, that this is something they're committed to, it changes the conversation for all of us. So it's really exciting, and it's a great time to be starting on your journey or increasing your commitment to employee well-being today.
Thank you. I think that's the perfect way to wrap up the bulk of our content here. So we'll start taking some Q&A. Laura, we'll throw this first one to you. How do you engage different types of employees in well-being programming? So assuming you have a large company, a very diverse workforce, you've got people working remotely, you may have blue collar, white collar jobs, full-time, part-time, you've got various subcultures across the organization, all those sorts of things. What do you see organizations doing that's effective?
Yeah, so it's a really hard problem to solve. I think even outside of those groups that you mentioned, there's also just how different every single person is in terms of the things that they care about and want to focus on. So the way that we do it, and this is more of a technology solution, is really around how we offer up lots of choice in the things that are in our programs, the challenges and recommendations that we offer. We just have a lot of choice. But on top of that, we definitely think hard about personalization. So for example, we might offer up some ideas for some employees to go and do some certain kinds of exercise or outdoor activities, well, we would personalize it to their location because we know that we have data on where those people live. So we do a lot in our software to personalize the things that we recommend to our participants based on the data we have about where they live, where they work, what kinds of hours they work. And so, for example, if somebody works at night, we probably wouldn't offer, suggest to them, let's go outside while you're at work as much, maybe, depending on their location. So that's why it's so important to be really thoughtful about how these programs are designed. So we use more of a technology approach to that. Now, at the same time, we also have really think hard about how we communicate to different subgroups too, and try to get some really pretty cool different approaches to our communication and marketing to those subgroups. So that's a pretty important part of it too.
To add just a little bit more to that, because I think a lot of organizations are dealing with having different subgroups and creating consistency in terms of the employee experience and making things feel fair. That's a word we hear a lot. And so I think an important thing to focus on is messaging during the hiring process, during the onboarding process, and calling out that there's going to be different types of roles in the organization and that programs will be different for different people. But then finding the opportunities to create continuity in the employee experience. So maybe your headquarters has, for example, a meditation teacher that comes in, but maybe remote employees can tune into that meditation through through a Skype session or something along those lines. I think there's different ways to focus on the same element of well-being in different ways to different subsections of your population.
Thank you. I think those are all great insights. For our second question, Laura, we'll throw this one to you as well. In what ways have you seen organizations incorporating well-being into employee reviews or goals? And is this even a good thing to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do that here at Limeade. We very much believe that this is going to make us a great company if we really support the well-being of our employees. So the ways that we do it here, we have one of our values is about, we call it Be It, and it's really the idea of embracing well-being, embracing well-being improvement. So half of an employee's performance review score is whether or not they're living the values. So this Be It is one of our values. So that's one way that we do it, and we feel really strongly about it. We also have every single employee has a specific goal around some aspect of their life that they're trying to improve. So it can be something that's, what you consider a well-being kind of goal. It could be a professional development goal. There's all different things that could be, but we talk monthly about how each employee is improving. So we do it for sure here, and I've heard about other companies, starting to weave it in, maybe more from a qualitative perspective and really encouraging employees to have more well-being in their life. But I think that this is an interesting direction that companies are headed.
Thank you. One of the things that sparks for me too is this may look very different in different companies depending on your culture. And one of the things that we measure at CultureIQ is what we call strategic culture. And that's how your culture and the behaviors present within your organization align with really your customers' values or your clients' values and what you're expected to deliver. And we have a specific dimension on that framework that's professional versus social. So are we really business focused in the office, and we really only talk about business and we're very buttoned up, or are we a very social culture and have more personal relationships and friendships? And based on what your strategy is and how you deliver for your customer, and then also what your employee preferences are, you may be on a different part of that continuum, and there's no right or wrong, but that also probably determines the amount with which you would want to integrate wellness goals into any sort of goal setting process, I would imagine. And Laura, I'd venture to say, my guess is you have a very social culture and close relationships at Limeade. Is that fair?
Yeah, very much, very much. And yes, we definitely do. And we really we call our focus intentional culture, right? We're just really super intentional about what the expectations we have for how we work with each other. And we really think that translates into how we work with our customers. So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the next question up is, how do you see collaboration and technology working in the future to create a culture of well-being? So similar to how doctors are working with health coaches is kind of the prompt here, but how do you see technology being a part of this?
Well, you can go ahead, Laura. All right. Well, one thing I'll say is that looking back to the various goals that companies are identifying with their wellness programs, it's important to find multiple touch points for reaching those goals. And for example, let's say a company is trying to improve mindfulness in an organization. There's many ways involving, in-person events, so something like mindfulness sessions in your office, technology, so for example, bringing something like Headspace app, mindfulness app subscriptions to your population, and then opportunities in the actual physical workspace. So creating a space within your office for people to have quiet time or mindfulness time. So we're definitely seeing a lot of implementations that sort of bridge the physical space, the technological space, and that also can help bring remote employees or bring employees with different hours sort of into the same common goal.
Yeah, just to build on that, what Liz was just saying, we absolutely work with primarily customers who have 5,000 employees or more, and so we have other partners that we work really closely with, and we have basically our software is integrated with them. So, for example, Weight Watchers, and also a company here called Tiny Pulse that does weekly employee surveys. So, all of those partners of ours are really integrated into the whole experience that a user would have when they participate in our program. And also on top of that, we have a really close partner who does coaching for our programs. So individual coaching and group coaching, and that whole experience is integrated. So I think there is something really important about this collaboration piece from a technology integration perspective, especially when you think about this idea, if you really buy into this idea of whole person well-being, there's a lot of different components of that, and it's pretty critical to have partners who do certain things as part of your ecosystem. So I think that the idea of collaboration and integration is absolutely going to be even more and more part of well-being, and also technology really helps facilitate that.
Great. So we've got, I think we've got time for these last two questions here. One's a little bit meatier, and I think one will be pretty straightforward, just tactical advice. There's one about engaging managers that don't want to be involved, and just to use the language texted in, there are some terrible managers out there who will not participate, which we all know is true, right? And so there are a couple of things I'll say here, and then would love to get, is my opinion, just working in culture more broadly, and trying to engage managers in any of these things, not just wellness, but then if any of our panelists want to chime in, would love to hear your thoughts as well. For me, the first thing that jumps to mind is you can't design for the lowest common denominator. Just because there will be some that won't participate, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do what's right or what's best for your company. The other piece here too is I think it ties back to some of the measurement components that we talked about, and really looking at how we're evaluating managers more holistically for their leadership performance, certainly not just their individual performance, but I think these wellness items show up in how people view their managers as leaders, and how effective these managers are at inspiring performance within their teams. And so I think that's kind of the process and policy side of it, is making sure that those incentive and measurement systems are aligned with how people are truly leading in their organization. And then I think what you'll find ultimately is the most successful managers will be exhibiting the right behaviors about wellness, around recognition, around support, and all those sorts of things that we want to see our managers doing. So I think a lot of it comes back to that. And then finally, that piece about senior leadership really championing this. Laura talked about that being component number 3, which is still up there in the top 3, and certainly hearing messages from top leaders carries a lot of weight for folks as well. So those are a few things that come to mind. Any other thoughts on engaging managers that might be your curmudgeons from the panelists?
I just 100% agree with you that it's a bigger thing, right? If we really need to hold those managers accountable. I know it's easy to say, but we really have to find ways to measure and find out those managers that are doing a great job and those who aren't, because they really probably shouldn't be managing.
Yeah, and my guess would be is that wellness is not the only thing that they're not
yes.
not engaged
exactly.
in. Would be my guess. So, and then I know we're right at time. So the last question I think is very tactical here. How would you identify health fair vendors in your community? So the San Francisco Bay Area, for example. Liz, do you have a quick answer to that? I know you brought that up as one of the free options.
Oh yeah, well they'll probably email you. They tend to send out a lot of emails. But one vendor I know I'm pretty sure is national is Health Fairs Direct, and I'd also recommend just Googling around, your city name, free corporate health fair, and see what comes up. There's a lot of options out there. And then ask for references. Definitely call some of their other clients and make sure that they're a winning organization.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, just want to thank everyone for dialing in today. So much for joining us, and then a huge thank you to Laura and Liz, our panelists. Just really appreciate you joining us and all the insights you shared. And we look forward to seeing everyone on our next webinar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Thanks, CultureIQ.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Laura.
You too, Liz.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.